You get the picture. I'm going to move on from that. The successor needs a vision that is compatible with what has gone before. A vision that is compatible with what has gone before. The transfer of loyalty must be encouraged by the leader, the outgoing leader, when the change takes place. There must be a kingdom mentality, not a me-first mentality. I know that in what I'm doing this morning, that from this morning on, I take a back seat in Canada. I've already done it since January the 1st. But from this morning on, my role is no longer primary in Canada, and I must take a back seat and go out of the picture so that my successor can take my place and move the whole ministry forward. There's a few things in this book that just relate to, and I don't, oh boy, we're getting on in time, aren't we, already? Let me skip some of this. There are some other things in this book that I could refer to, but things that you need to look for when you're looking for a successor. I encourage you to get the book. It's In Search of Timothy. It's written by Tony Cook. The subtitle is Discovering and Developing Greatness in Church Staff and Volunteers. That is the primary emphasis of it, but you can read some other things out of it. I want to talk for a minute about the relationship between Elijah and Elisha, because that is another aspect of a successor taking from a father. But we don't enter the picture. We don't know anything about the relationship between Elijah and Elisha, hardly anything about it, and until it comes to the final moments of the transfer. And in the final moments of that transfer, Elijah tries to dissuade Elisha from coming with him. And Elisha, out of the determination that he has now made, I am going to follow this thing through. I am now going to receive the double anointing. I am now going to follow in the footsteps and take this to the next level. Elisha refuses to be dissuaded. And because of that refusal, he crosses the Jordan with Elijah, sees the catching away, receives the mantle, and moves forward. But we don't know what went before that, other than that he was in the school of the prophets. I suppose all of the school of the prophets had that opportunity, but Elisha somehow singled himself out for that role and became one of the champions of the Old Testament. A successor needs to be determined, and they may need to make that determination on their own. It can't be made for them. They have to make it. Yes, this is God speaking to me. This is not me being pushed into something. Ted McLean is here today. Ted has been named as my successor in Canada. He has already become the national leader. He was put into that position by the Canadian board. We're going to be laying hands on him this morning. Most of this whole thing that went on with me, Ted knew nothing about. Absolutely nothing. Never divulged a word to him, never told him a thing. I did, about 7 or 8 years ago, go and talk to his mother and his grandmother. Now you have to understand Ted's mother and grandmother. They are like Timothy's mother and grandmother. 2 women of extreme faith, extreme power, extreme anointing, and extreme prophetic. And I have trusted them before in speaking into my life on many, many occasions. I remember Ted's grandma. I missed a flight to France. I was supposed to go over and minister in a conference, and I missed the flight simply by an oversight, looking at the wrong time on the ticket. I went home all dejected and crawled into bed thinking, God, I've missed it. I've just blown the whole thing. My wife phoned Grandma. Grandma said, put him on the phone. I got the phone up to my ear. She says, you get out of that bed right now and get on the computer. There is a ticket waiting for you. You're going to find it when you get on the computer. You're not going to find it if you stay in that bed. Get out of bed and look for it. That's Grandma. I got out of bed, got on the computer, and right before my eyes there it sprung up. The only difference was it was a ticket for 2 people instead of 1. And the Lord said, you should have been smarter in the beginning. Your wife's supposed to go with you. So the 2 of us, Marg came up the stairs and she said, have you found anything? I said, yes, go pack your suitcase, you're going with me. We had to leave in 4 hours to get to the airport. That's Grandma. So I did go and talk to them. And I said, do you see this as a role for your son and your grandson? And both of them immediately said, yes, we do. But I said, don't tell Ted. Don't say anything to him. They didn't. Until he went back, and I told him that I had spoken to them that long ago, and he went back and talked to them. But they said nothing to him. And it wasn't until just a few years ago that I broached Ted on it. In the meantime, I had utilized Ted many, many times to do tasks for me. Initially, I would work with him on those tasks. He went with me to Haiti. He went with me to Grenada. He went with me different places. And then I began to send him on mission trips without me going. I said, I'm not going on this one. You take the team. And I would get a report back of what had taken place. And it was good. You know, I could see him moving into this. And it was just confirming. And then finally, the time came to speak to him about it. He says he was totally blown away. I believe him. His reaction was totally blown away. Who, me? But as we moved forward in that, and the time drew closer, and we went through a period just back last year where he had to make the decision himself. I said, Ted, I'm not influencing you. You go home, pray, get counsel, decide. If your answer is no, that's fine. He came back, waited a while, left me holding the bag for quite a little while. Then he came back. He said, my answer is yes. God spoke to me. So I am confident. I am confident in what God is saying, and I believe that Ted will take what's happening in Canada to the next level. He will see the fulfillment of some of the prophetic words that have been spoken to me that have not yet been fulfilled. I believe that. I'm going to ask Ted to come. I've asked the presbyters to come. I've asked the Canadian board members that are here to come. And I've asked one other person to come, that's Gerald Josie. Gerald has spoken into my life so many times down here. He has imparted things to me. And as I pray for Ted today, I've asked Gerald to stand behind me, put his hands on my shoulders as I put my hands on Ted.